Good afternoon. Welcome to the Education Subcommittee on Policy. Honored to have you all here this afternoon on a committee workday here at the Capitol. I'd like to start out with a fun tradition we do. If you are a teacher, former teacher, current teacher, if you're studying to be a teacher, please raise so that we can recognize you. Rise. Thank you. Awesome. Love our teachers. We have a quorum here today. We've got Representative Bruce to present, but I'm going to go to number 24. Did I get that right? Okay. Representative Paris, if you would open us up in a word of prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. Father, we praise you for this day, for the honor of this day. We ask you to look on us as we do the people's business. Lord, help us to keep them ever forward and center, and help us to make the right decision. And we thank you for life, health, and strength today, and all of your blessings, seen and unseen. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Representative Bruce, for coming here this afternoon. We are here today to hear House Bill 238. I've got LC 491083, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm not going to go into the detail of the bill. I want to just kind of give you how this came about, and then I'm going to let these young ladies behind me tell you what the rest of it is. That's okay. Basically, all of you probably do the same thing. You go to your schools in your district, and you talk to the kids about how bills get passed. And that's what happened here. And in this particular case, after we talked to them, they said, okay, well, we got a bill we want you to get passed. And that's how this bill came about. They are part of a group of students that meet once or twice, I'm not sure it is, a week, about community issues and things of importance. And this bill and the substance of it is of importance to them. And so I appreciate you taking the opportunity. This is a lesson for them. They're learning how this process works. And so I appreciate you participating in that education process, and I'm sure that you would want it for your own students as well. Okay, so with that, I think they've submitted their names, and they'll come up and they'll tell you what their bill is about, and we go from there.
Well, thank you, Representative Bruce, and I'll tell the audience and the students here, if y'all figure out how to pass the bill, if you could let me know. I'm still trying to learn, but it's a complicated process, but one, I think intentionally that's meant to be complicated, because what we do here impacts 11 million Georgians, and we want to take very measured, incremental approaches to policy, and so it goes through a lot of work, a lot of committee hearings just like this, but the most important thing we do is we hear from Georgians like you. And so I am excited. I've got 4 students, and then in my committee, we always let students go first.
All right.
Because y'all got to get back to school. But unless it's a day off, then go to the varsity and have fun. But we're gonna start. I'm gonna try to read some handwriting here. Soraya Rose. Come on up to the podium there.
You're gonna have them at the podium.
I'm gonna have them right there at the podium. Your mic is hot.
Oh, right?
Yes, ma'am. You got the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Soraya Rose. I attend Renaissance Middle School, and my parent is Latoya Brown. And today, I'm here to discuss why we need bus monitors on our buses. So, a lot of things happen on the bus nowadays. Fights happen. Kids with medical issues could have problems on the bus. And a lot of time with the bus driver, when they're driving, they can't always pay attention on what's going on behind them because they need to focus on the road. And, it's a lot. It's like a safety hazard. If the bus driver's like, okay, sit down. I need you to put your feet in the aisle, take your feet out of the aisle, don't sit on this person's lap, don't stand up on the bus. It's a lot going on, and they got to focus on the road. So it's like a big safety hazard. But when we have a bus monitor, it's someone extra who can, help out, and they could be like, okay, sit down. I don't want you standing up. Don't, don't like mess up the bag. Like, don't drop things on the floor. Don't make a mess. Don't fight. It could help out a lot. And especially when there's medical issues on the bus. Like, for example, one girl on my bus one time, she had a seizure. And the teachers had to, the bus driver had to pull over. The kids had to pick her up. It was so much going on, and it was like cars going past, and it was so much going on. And then the bus driver, they were like, call the ambulance. And there were so many kids like scared. They were screaming. They were trying to call their parents. It was a lot going on because the girl collapsed on the floor, and a boy had to pick her up. He wasn't even supposed to do that because he's not strong enough to pick her up. But if we have a bus monitor, they could help out. They could call the ambulance. They could have called her mom. They could have told the kids to sit down. There were kids piling up on each other, scared, screaming, doing all types of like extra things that weren't necessary, and it was a big safety hazard. And a lot of things, like a lot of other things happen on the bus where it's like if we have a bus monitor, it could help out a lot, and it could help any safety hazard. If kids are standing up, if kids want to fight, it's like a safety a safety monitor or someone who can help us on the bus could be like, okay, don't do that. Sit down. If you don't want to sit next to the person, you could simply move up to the front. Especially with a lot of kids with overcrowding on the bus, it's a big issue with, safety because kids are trying to stand up because they don't have nowhere to sit. Kids are sitting on other kids' laps. They're piling up in one seat. So it's like a big safety hazard, and the bus driver cannot focus on that because they're trying to focus on the road and keep it moving. So this is why we need a bus monitor. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Well, hold on. Stay at the podium there. You may have some questions now. Hold on. Uh-oh, this board's lighting up. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, I'm on personal privilege. I'm going to ask the first question. What grade are you in?
I am in 7th grade.
7th grade. What's your favorite subject?
My favorite subject, probably math.
Good for you. Stick with that. All right. I love it. All right, we're going to go to my right here. Number 24 has a great question for you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for presenting to us today. It's been a long time since I was on a school bus and kind of forgot those days, but can you tell me how it really made you feel when all of that chaos is going on?
It made me feel like really nervous on what was going on for the girl because I didn't know if she was like okay or not. Like there was foam coming up. It was like a lot going on. And then there was like, I was like in the corner because I was like right by the window in the corner because like, as I said, the bus was overcrowded. So it's like when they were trying to lift her up, it was just like so like panic. I was in a panic mode and I didn't know what to do because I wouldn't want that to happen to me. So I was just like hoping that she was okay. And plus like the aisles are like really tight, and the boy had to pick her. It was like so much going on, and it's like I just want to go to school. I just want to go in my class. And yeah, that just like affected me. Like what if that happened to me?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to my left here, number 16, with a question for you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your testimony, and you seem like a very smart young lady, so we just want to say thank you for coming. Do you know how many buses that we're talking about in the pilot program? How many buses that we'll need? Bus monitors on those buses.
It's not like for all the buses, like it's just like for specific buses. So like people, the schools, if they have a problem with a specific bus, they could like, sign something that says like, hey, we need a bus monitor. It's not gonna be like for every bus. It's just open to all the buses. It's not like, oh, I'm just gonna do it for this school and not this school. It's like you have a chance to like, get a bus monitor on your bus, but it's not you don't have to necessarily, have a bus monitor on every bus.
Then my second question, if it's okay.
Please do.
Do you know if the bus monitor would need to have CPR and some other things that would be helpful in the case of a health emergency? Would you suggest that?
It would be a good idea for them to, have some health experience. So if anything happens, they could be like, a help instead of just having to call the ambulance. They could also help out. So that could be like a good help too.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We got a hard question coming up, number 23 to my right here.
Appreciate it, Chairman, and thank you for being here, 7th grade. And I'm a former mathlete myself, so go math. My question is, how long, if you don't mind, Sharon, do you generally have to spend on the bus when you either go from home to the school or from the school to home? What's your average amount of time on the bus, roughly?
Probably like a good 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Because we have to like go through the whole entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it would take like a good 10 to 15 on a day-to-day, coming and going.
Okay, well, listen, I appreciate you coming and advocating, and I'm going to ask a question since we have some folks from DOE here. I'm curious because they brought a great point. Could you share with the sponsor of the bill at some point in time before the end of session a number or an estimation of the number of school systems that currently already utilize locally bus monitors so that these students can have that information to guide this process that they're learning about today? Is that something you could provide to the sponsor? Would the sponsor be amenable to that information for his constituents? Thank you so much for bringing this bill.
You're welcome.
Great question, Leader Wade. My commute on the bus was 30 minutes. Hold on, you're not out of the hot seat yet. Yeah, this is part of the, hold on now. I got one other question. It's a controversial bill you brought us here. We got to flush this. All right, number 25 here. Question.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for being here. I'm a former middle school teacher myself, so kids at your age are great, and appreciate what you do. Appreciate you being here today. Question for you, too, just kind of look at it. When you're riding on the bus, and they mentioned time of going back and forth to school, what about, do you guys have assigned seats right now? I know it's hard for the bus driver. I've always commended bus drivers because how do you have discipline, controlled discipline when you're trying to drive at the same time? It's hard. It really is. And so are y'all in kind of assigned seats or things like that to help out, or?
No, it's just like depends on the student. Like, some kids, they would rather sit in the front. Some kids, they would rather sit in the back. Some kids, they would rather sit with like their brother and their sister. But like the bus driver, they don't control like any assigned seats because a lot of times, the bus is overcrowded. So it's like they can't even put two people in the seat. They have to like, kids have to squeeze in. So it wouldn't be, it couldn't like possibly be assigned seats because there's too many kids, and kids coming from different schools and different districts, they're like still kids coming in, so they're
Just overcrowded in your bus.
yeah, so there wouldn't be assigned seats on our
Well,
bus.
thank you.
Perfect. Well, I see no more questions. You are out of the hot seat. Great job, 7th grade. Everybody give her a round of applause. Come on now. Great job. Great job. Now, Carrie, I got you up next. You may have lucked out here. All the questions may have been asked, but where's Carrie Watford? Come on up. Let's hear from you. And what grade are you in?
I'm in 7th grade.
Awesome. Mike is
Okay.
yours.
My name is Carrie Watford. I go to Renaissance Middle School. I'm in 7th grade, and my parent is Tamika Ennis. Okay, so I think that we should be able to have bus monitors on the bus because, like Sarai said, there's a lot of safety hazards, a lot of issues on the bus. And with the bus driver, they're hired to drive you from and to school. So they don't really have much control on what's going on behind them because their job is to drive you to and from school. And for example, there's a lot of issues like on the buses, like especially at my school specifically. For example, there was this one fight on my bus with two girls. And at my school, everybody, when they see a fight, they tend to go towards the fight instead of away from it. So when the two girls were fighting on the bus, they were like on top of a seat because on the bus, their seats, like they're right in front and behind each other. So the two girls, when they were fighting, they were on top of the seat. And there were two girls sitting inside the seat. And while the two girls were fighting, there were two girls inside of a seat, and the two girls that were fighting were smushing the girls that were in the seat, like under the seat, like towards the aisle and into the aisle. And that happening, somebody could have got injured. Thank God nobody did, but somebody could have got injured because you're pushing human beings like in a very tight space. They could have, one of the girls, she got pushed under the seat. She could have like died or was injured from like suffocation or anything like that. And I feel like with a bus monitor on the bus, it would the bus monitor could redirect kids, like Sarai said, tell them to go sit down, help out with any medical problems, just redirect kids in general.
Thank you very much. I'll take a point of personal privilege and ask you a question. Line 47 uses the word promulgate. Can you help define that for me? I'm just messing around with you. I'm messing around with you. I'm just messing around with you. Yeah. I'm messing around. I got a 7th grader. I don't think he could spell promulgate. All right, I'm going to go to my left with a question number 18.
Thank you, Chair. What's your name again?
Carrie.
Carrie. It's so nice to meet you, Carrie. I'm Representative Maynard. I have 2 children in school. I want to ask you some questions about the things that you said. You said when kids are fighting, normally kids tend to go towards the fight. Do you understand why they do that?
Yes.
Why do they do that?
Well, they do that because they want to see the fight. Like, most of the kids at my school are very, like, messy. So when they see a fight, they're going to go towards the fight instead of away from it. Just because they want to see it, they want to record. Usually when kids are fighting at my school, they scream, they record, they put it on their Instagram and stuff like that.
Okay, got another question for you. When kids are fighting on the school bus, do you see the same kids on the school bus the next day? What is the disciplinary action? Do you know?
I believe you get suspended off of the bus, and I believe you do get suspended from school. So you're getting suspended from the school and from the bus. So I think I'm not sure, but I think the suspension like on the bus is like 2 weeks, and the suspension from school is about 10 days.
And then I got one more question for you, if you don't mind, Chair. So the kids are fighting on the bus. Kids think that's fun. They gravitate towards it to record it. Those kids do get suspended, and they're off the bus for 2 weeks or however long. When they're off the bus, are there still other kids that will promulgate these fights?
Yes, like when the fight on my bus happened specifically, the next day everybody was talking about it. Everybody on the bus was talking about it. They was asking like, who got the video, who got this, did anybody post it or stuff like that.
But is it like one group that's fighting, or it's just so many people fighting? It's not even just one group.
Fighting? No, there was actually only 2 people fighting on the bus.
Okay.
2 girls.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, you're lighting up here. Hold on, we got questions. I'll ask a question, a serious question, though. What's typically the genesis of what are they typically fighting over? Just teenage?
Well, this specific fight, they had fought previously, became back friends, and then fought again. So I'm not sure exactly what it was about, but I know that they fought previously, got friends, and fought again.
Do you think the bus monitor ought to confiscate phones until you guys get to school and then give them back? I mean,
well, me specifically, in the morning time, in the afternoon, I like to be on my phone because I be bored on the bus because I usually don't talk to people on the bus because I don't know most of them. So I don't think that you should per se take the phones and then give them back when they get to school. I think that like specifically when a fight is going on, I think anybody that's recording or stuff like that, I think the bus monitor should have the power to like take the phone away from them or like redirect them, say they're going to give them disciplinary action, like tell the school, stuff like that.
Perfect. I'm going to go to my left here, number 17, with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for being here. And I'm picturing my kids went to school and rode the bus, etc. And as you're describing what you're talking about, they're friends, they're not friends, they fight over little words. God, you sound like a legislator in a lot of ways. I mean, if you think about it, we fight over Shell and May, and we're great friends, and and so we need those bus monitors. So I think if the bus monitors were on there, wouldn't they kind of be able to get in front of it before things happen?
Yes.
That's like a committee chairman. I mean, it's you get in the middle of friction, and so I just want to thank you that what you're describing is no different. I mean, you're growing up in the real world, and you're bringing real world solutions to us. So I just want to thank you so much for what you're sharing with us, because we haven't been on a bus in a long time. And so thank you for being here.
Thank you, Representative. We've got one more question for you to my right, number 24, with a question.
Thank you, Chairman. So thank you so much for being here today. This is very important. However, depending on the urgency of the administration, bills are kind of hard to get passed here. It takes a minute. So in the interim, what's your immediate solution to all of the chaos that you all are having? Because something's got to give. I mean,
Well-
if the driver gets so distracted that he, just kind of takes a wrong turn, it can be
Yeah,
pretty bad. So tell me, what would be your solution in the interim while we're trying to
would
get
be
this
my
done for
solution
you?
specifically?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, if I was a bus driver and
Not if you were a bus driver. I just need, because you're not, you're not a bus driver. The children at some point have to take responsibility, and I just want to know, as a student on the bus, I need leadership there.
Well, the two girls that were fighting on the bus, I would try to break up with the fight, but at the same time try to stay like out of it, because when students tend to fight, they tend to be angry, like they tend to have a lot of emotions going on with them. So if I was to if the girls were fighting and I was to try to break up the fight, maybe one of the girls would like hit me or anything like that. So I would try to calm them down, but at the same time stay out the way.
Right, right. So everybody kind of sitting down and being quiet, probably cutting down on the conversation, maybe not take their phones, let you all just look at your phones while you're riding, and everybody mind their own business probably would be a better solution to, everybody talking and conversing and ramping things up. But thank you so much for coming before us today.
All right, Carrie, I'll tell you, there's a rule down here. The more you talk, the harder it is to pass a bill. I'm getting more questions here. I'm going to go to my right, number 23, with a question.
Well, I hope this will help back home, and I'm going to share this as an idea to see what you think of it as a student, okay? To my left is a gentleman that I got to meet because he was a volunteer in our local school system for our football program. And I know in my district, I was a school board member for a while, and we dealt with situations where occasionally we had volunteers from the community that wanted to help us in areas that we had needs during the Great Recession, which was probably before you were born. But that Great Recession meant we didn't have a lot of money to do extras like things like bus monitors. But we had community members and civic groups that said, hey, we would be happy to help you and go through a process to do that. Have you guys, or would you guys be willing to have that conversation? I bet your representative would be happy to go and meet with the school system and the superintendent and see if sometimes there are solutions that laws aren't necessarily the only way to address a concern. And what's your thought on that?
I think I would go sit down and talk about that, because sometimes people, they just want to help out. Like, they're not always in for like the money or anything like that. Sometimes they just want to help out their community.
Fantastic. You've got one more question on my left here, number 18.
Hi, Carrie. And if I was your mom, I would be so proud of you. I was thinking, as you were talking about it, in the midst of fighting, that is just chaos, right? And when you see the fights on the news from the students that are recording, whether it's on the bus or even at the school, oftentimes the teachers then, and so on the bus in this case, they end up being in the fight, right? And so one thing I'm thinking is, okay, you have a moving vehicle, and you not only have kids out of control fighting, but to put an adult in that situation, knowing they're also going to now be recorded, and they really can't do but so much, because then they might get fired. It's so chaotic. I do think that what Representative Wade said is a really good idea. We don't, it's oftentimes in urban communities, we don't think we have so many resources that we forget about communities that have very few resources, which is our community. Advocates in our community, I bet there are so many advocates in your district. How you're coming to us and talking to us, you should go to the school board. Have you been to a school board meeting to speak?
No.
Where you're on a roll. You should go to the school board. You should say this to the school board, and you should let them know that you came up here, you spoke to us, and you're highly concerned, and we're highly concerned that kids are on the bus fighting repeatedly. and you suggest that they go out and help you find some volunteers to get on the bus immediately.
Thank you.
You know, I do want to, on a serious note, I want to echo what you just heard here from Representative Maynor. You are your best advocate, and we're taking pictures and videos and all that stuff. You got phones, post that, share it, stir up trouble, and you know, go to your, not trouble, good trouble, go to your school board and say, hey, I went down and testified, and we need to get something done. And so take advantage of this opportunity, learn from it. And, you know, all it takes is one voice, one person, and don't count out because your age. You know, all of us can get something done no matter how old we are. So, see, now I'm talking too much, and you got a question to my right here. So I'm going to go to Representative Cox here with a question.
Great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Echoing off of them, there's a community that it will take to help raise a child. Many times you hear it takes a village. And I know with my own children that was very important. I would strongly encourage you to hit in your community, to hit every resource of communities of faith, nonprofits, PTAs, whatever it takes to protect the students on the bus so they can get to and from where they need to go. And the adults in the room need to solve the problem. And sometimes when you're going through this avenue, it shows the seriousness that you have, but be open to different and unique ideas. It could be coaches, it maybe could be past students, whatever it may be, but look at every one of those avenues to help raise the children. Great job.
All right. Now, I'll remind the committee, we got 7 more folks we got to hear from. So I'm going to go to my left here, number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I do want to highlight, though, that I think one of the challenges we have with bus drivers is the fact that now I think Cobb County is paying $25 an hour or something to that effect because they're asked to do so many jobs. If you recall, back several years ago, we had a study committee on school counselors because they were doing so many jobs. In some schools, they handled basic needs. Other schools, they're career coaches. So we're not just talking about fights. We're talking about the kid that has an epileptic seizure. We're talking about the child that loses their medicine, or we're talking about other issues, a child just crying on the bus. A volunteer, and I've run into this with community coaches, is that they see a young lady crying, you know, the natural instinct may be like, hey, I feel good. But next thing you know, you have to be careful of how you approach children. And so I think by professionalizing this and not relying on parents who have good intentions but don't understand the law, I think that is the risk. If we had an oversupply of bus drivers, I would say, yeah, we're fine. But we can't even get people to drive the bus. So we know we have an issue. So I want to thank you. And I think the legislative approach probably is the best to put money in the budget if that's a concern, because kids can't learn if they're worried about getting to school. So thank you for that.
Perfect. Carrie, you are officially off the hot seat. Great job. Everyone give her a round of applause, please. All right, y'all are testing my handwriting reading here. Is it Kai up next? All right, Kai. Dressed up, looking good. You're going to be up here in my seat here pretty soon. Kai, you can move that computer down if you need to. Does somebody help her out? Move that mic down. Grab that mic and there you go. Kai, what grade are you in?
I'm in 6th grade.
Love it. You got the mic.
Okay. So so I want this bill passed because I feel like it would make the environment for students and the bus driver a lot more safe, because when the bus driver is trying to drive and also maintain students, it's a very big safety hazard, considering that they also need to be focused on the road and stuff. And something that happens almost every day on the bus is the bus driver having to scold students and telling them not to do this and not to do that. And all the kids are always screaming, hey, look at the road, because she's always looking back in the rearview mirror, looking at the kids and not focusing on the road. By having an extra attendant, it would it would really help with like safety and for the bus driver only having to focus on one thing, which is driving.
That's great. Kai, you've done a great job. Great presentation. You do have one question, if that's okay. Do you yield for a question? All right. Number 16 to my left here.
Thank you again, Kai. You are just well-spoken, and it was great to listen. One of the things that you pointed out was really the safety of the bus driver as well as the students. Do you think that bus drivers who are driving knowing that there's someone else on the bus to maintain the students, do you think that their job is made easier by that extra person being on the bus?
I think that the job would be made easier knowing that they don't have to be in two places at once, trying to keep their eyes on the road and drive and get the kids to where they need to be safely. Knowing that there's an extra attendant on the bus to help with all that stuff that they had to do beforehand, I think that it would be very good and beneficial, not only to the bus driver, but also for the students in case they have an issue or they just don't feel comfortable telling anybody else about bullying and things like that.
Thank you. I've got one question for you, Kai. Kai, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you know yet?
I want to be an artist.
Very cool. That's awesome. All right, when you start painting, let me know. I want to buy some, all right? Well, Kai, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You can take, yeah. Give Kai a round of applause. We've got one more student. Is it Regina? Awesome. Come on up. Regina, what grade are you in?
I'm in 7th grade. My name is Regina Gunn, and I go to Renaissance Middle School. The reason I want this bill is because the safety for the bus drivers, the students, and the drivers around the bus. So for my bus, we go to more than one neighborhood, so there could be a lot of overcrowding. So some students have to stay on the bus, sit in another person's lap, and squeeze onto other seats. So if a kid is standing on the bus and the bus driver hits the brakes, the kid can easily fly off or trip and hurt themselves really bad or get a concussion. And with the extra help, they can just take care of the kid, and then the bus driver can keep on driving until we get medical assistance, if they already know some.
Well, Gina, thank you so much. You've got a question to my left here, number 18.
Thank you. What's the name of your school?
Renaissance Middle School.
Renaissance Middle School. And so Renaissance Middle School, when they take the buses to different communities, right now there's not enough room on your school bus in particular. People are sitting on each other's lap.
Well, sometimes a girl has to stay on the bus because there's really any seats.
So some people are standing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask you, what do we do about that? That is, what can we do about that just as legislators immediately, because that seems like a liability, and now that we know about it, what happens?
Yeah, that is, is anybody here with Fulton County? Are you Fulton County?
Yes.
Do we have anybody in the audience with Fulton County at all? I don't see anybody. Okay. I'm going to go to my left here with a comment. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I guess this is a question for DOE. Is transportation funding in QBE? Is there any money for transportation funding?
It's a separate category.
It's, okay, separate category.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is just not a Fulton County issue. This is statewide. So there is somebody from the school board from somewhere outside of Fulton County that's here. If you wanted a school board opinion.
Yeah, I think, well, clearly, I think we're learning from the testimony here. We got some issues with buses, so that's been good. You guys brought it. We were trying to solve the immediate, what worries me is you driving back and forth from home with people standing up in the bus, which is not safe. And so I've actually been trading calls with somebody on your Fulton County School Board this morning. So I'm going to call her back and ask her. I represent part of Fulton, so I'm going to ask her what's going on and see if I can get some answers for you guys, specifically your middle school. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. All right.
And report back to us.
That's
Come back.
all.
You're
Oh.
Yeah, hold on. We got to give you a round of applause first, Regina. That's all the students I have listed. I have Michelle Simmons with the Douglas County School Board, if you are here. Actually, if you go go ahead. That'd be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I kind of feel like I'm in between two spaces. Good to see you, Representative Wilkerson. Listening to the testimony of the students, right? Because my perspective is I have served in dual roles. As a teacher, I definitely understand the things that happen with the buses in regards to overcrowding and behaviors, right? I also understand that a lot of times we're having discussions right now. We're talking about students, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about systems, and it's absent parents. And from my perspective in regards to I just feel like there should be more conversation in regards to parents. Because even as you've mentioned, Representative, in regards to having assigned seats and sitting down and being quiet and paying attention to your phone, children hear that. They hear it at the end of every day when the school bell rings and they're told to leave the building. It's time to go. This is what we expect you to do. And when they get on that bus, they go in there and do what they want. You can see the energy even in the presentation, the energy that comes forth just talking about what's going on the buses. And imagine that with 30 plus children or more on a bus. It's a lot. So there are a lot of different variables that come to play when it comes to addressing what's actually going on the school buses specifically, and how to address it. So I'm torn. But I took a few notes. Earlier with issues in regards to health, seizures were mentioned. When a child has a seizure, they shouldn't be moved. And not everyone understands how to handle those particular situations. So even if a monitor, or I'm not even sure the training, because I'm not on that level. I'm on a school board. My hands are not in the pot. At least I don't think they are. In regards to things but the bus drivers, you need to have a certain skill set. You should have a certain skill set when you're working with children and you're on the bus handling it. One person on the bus, no. In each school, depending on, not like she said, they're absolutely correct. Not every bus requires a school monitor, but some buses do. So in regards to this piece of legislation, if this is the route that they're going to take, I support it. There should be monitors on buses, right? But on the school level, the administrators are aware of what's going on the buses, who's on the bus, and they typically place teachers or ask for volunteers, give incentives and things like that to have qualified people on the bus. And what I mean by qualified is people who are familiar with the children, who have a CPR, CIP background, who can do restraint if necessary and things like that. Sometimes some buses have had more than one bus monitor because of the volatility of what's going on in the schools and on the buses. After a certain amount of time, the administrators, if it's depending on what's going on with the student, they can only be out of school or off the bus for a certain amount of days. And if you're in a community where a parent doesn't have transportation, how will that student have transportation to get to school if the parent is unable to manage that child's behavior? And there are situations like that. Sometimes parents literally say, hey, I don't know what else to do. I've had a dad tell me in reference to his son, Miss Simmons, I don't know what to do with my son for various reasons that I won't disclose. So there are a lot of different nuances when it comes to making decisions and in these situations that are going on. Hopefully by this time, because they've been on the news and their administration and Fulton County Schools are aware of it, that they've addressed that situation and you all are not experiencing those situations on the bus. You are. No, no, for real. Are the students on your bus, you still having challenges on your bus? They're still fighting and everything. And you still don't have a bus monitor? Yeah. Yeah, so, so that's why I say I'm torn, because as a board member, my heart is talk to the, if things haven't been rectified on the school level with the administrator and the parents aren't satisfied, then you work your way up to get it taken care of.
That's right.
That's my heart, and that's the way it should be.
Well, we're gonna. Looks like you've got a question here to my right. I'm gonna go to 27.
I think that's me.
Yep.
My little sticker's gone. We should do better. So my question, as legislators, we try to get to the root of the problem a lot of times, and I recognize this is solely a school bus effort.
Right.
But my question to you is more so is, do you think some of the overcrowding and the issues that we're seeing on school buses, because I do believe it's a statewide issue, is maybe indicative of a bigger issue in terms of overcrowded schools?
I don't have the information to answer that correctly.
Okay.
I can't say that some schools are overcrowded, because we have issues outside of that. We're talking about shortages on bus drivers. We're talking about shortages of teachers in regards to the schools. So because there's a shortage of schools, there may be overcrowding in some classrooms.
Right.
Because there's a shortage of bus drivers, there may be combining routes in order to still manage and facilitate the transference of children from one place to the other.
Right. And
So there are other issues that have to be addressed in regards to that.
Yeah, I understand that. When you say they're combining routes, do you think they're combining like in one trip, or do you think they're taking multiple trips? Because that's something we have actually experienced in the district I represent, where kids weren't getting home until 7, 8 o'clock because they were having to take multiple trips. So I guess my biggest concern is when she was saying they're having to sit on people's laps, that's a bit inappropriate. And so if that's a reoccurring thing in a normal school system, I think we should ask that question: is why are these buses overcrowded?
I can't speak for Fulton County or any specific county. I think that the data would have to, kind of looking at the data to see, but there are multiple routes, and sometimes there have been combined routes. Back when I was teaching, I know some routes were combined. And in those situations, they did, hey, do we have a volunteer? I've been a volunteer monitor when I was teaching schools, to kind of mitigate and help out in those situations.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, Representative Daniel. We're going to go to my left here, number 18 with a question.
Thank you for coming. I think it's more just a comment, not necessarily to you, but just listening to you and everything. 3 things came to mind. One, our bus drivers first aid CPR certified. We probably need to make sure that is a requirement. The second thing is we have to remember that as adults, we may forget that we are in positions of authority. And so when we're talking to students, we have to remember how we're questioning them, because even how we question them can be intimidating. So I just want to point that out, right? The other thing is, this is such a strong topic to me in my heart, for many, many reasons. And we can blame parents all day long, but we're not in the business of making a parent do what they're supposed to do. Because just as kids run to a fight, they're learning that behavior from their parent that just doesn't know any better. So we can't say it's a parent problem. What we have to do is, okay, we have parents that are ill-informed. We have parents that may not be raising their children the best way. We have parents that do that. That is a reality. We're not going to fix that. And since we're not going to fix that, how do we change the environment for children that don't have parents? And so we can't keep saying it's the parents' fault. So if we have kids that don't have home training, if you will, what is the solution for those kids? To me, the solution is to Representative Daniel's point, we've got to completely change the system. How you educate a child in one community can't be the same way that you educate a child in another community. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm just very passionate about it, and I'm just...
Absolutely. I appreciate that comment, and I apologize. I don't want to come across like that. I know how I feel on the inside about the topic, and I know how I can come across. So where I did in any way that was offensive, I apologize.
Thank you. We've got one more question for you to my left, Representative Glaze.
I see in the bill, and thank you so much for coming and representing Douglas County Schools. It says that that local schools can participate in a pilot program. Would you guys be interested, or would you, Douglas County, be interested in being as a part of a pilot?
As a board member, I'm here as a board member for Douglas County School System, and as a board member, I would be interested in being a pilot program, but it will be the will of the board.
Yes, but I just
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I've got no other questions for you. I want to thank you for your service and for your time here this afternoon.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you. With that, we've got about 13 minutes, and I've got 3 more folks to speak. So I'll just encourage you to keep it brief, bold, and be gone. 3 B's of public speaking. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Williams-Brown if you're here. Thank you for your service. Appreciate you coming down to your capital.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Natasha Williams Brown. I am on the City Council in the City of South Fulton representing District 6, which, if you are familiar with Old National Highway, runs from World Changers Church International down to the CVS at Old National and Bethsaida Road. I am pleased to stand here today in support of these students who identified a problem and then took action to solve the problem. One of the things I've done in my past was I was a parent representative on the Hateville Charter School Board for about 4 years when my daughter was a student there. And problems like this are exactly the types of problems that we would discuss as the charter school board members and attempt to solve. And so this is not a new problem. This is something, if you yourself went to public school, I can remember riding the bus at Northside and kids were getting into fights, back in the 80s. So the fact that these students have brought this forward, I think, is to be commended and appreciated. They've outlined very clearly the mechanics of the problem. I would like to just make 2 additional points to build on the case that they have made. Number 1, riding the bus to and from school presents students with an environment in which they have a reasonable expectation that they will be safe, as not just physically safe as they are transported on the bus, but psychologically and emotionally safe as they are traveling. And so when students are describing overcrowding, they're describing fights, they're describing chaotic atmospheres, that does not just stay on the bus. That environment gets off the bus and goes into the school, and then it gets back on the bus and comes into the community. If you follow the news, you know that in the city of South Fulton last year, we had several instances where disputes that began outside of the school carried over into the school in ways that were harmful to the student body at large. And so in as much as we prescribe many things through legislation for what should happen with education, this is another area where I do believe, yes, volunteers can play a role, but when you're looking at something that is statewide, I believe that it does, in fact, need a legislative solution. The second point that I would make is professionally, I'm a certified research administrator employed by Emory University and the Rollins School of Public Health. And what I do professionally is work with faculty to secure funding for their research. And in tracking this bill, once I learned of it and tracking it and looking into the problem, one of the things that I found is that there is a dearth of research on this particular issue as it pertains to the impact that these types of environments on school buses have on students. And so not only do I think that this is an area that is ripe for legislative action, this is an area where Georgia has the opportunity to be a leader in piloting this volunteer program and demonstrating to the rest of the country that this is something that can enhance and improve a student's ability to learn. Because if they are able to be in a safe environment as they are being transported, how much more ready will they be to learn when they get to the schoolhouse? And if they're able to go home in a safe environment, how much more ready will they be to participate in their extracurriculars, to do their homework, to do those positive things that we want to see them do, rather than get off the school bus, go home, get their gun, and go, to go shoot up somebody's house because of a fight that started, elsewhere. And so those are the only two things that I would want to add. Again, thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and thank you for the opportunity to stand before you and in some small way contribute to supporting these students as they continue on this journey to maybe, run for my seat one day.
I love it. Councilman, thank you for your powerful testimony. That was excellent. It sounds like you have done some research on this subject. If you wouldn't mind, whatever you may have, if you could funnel it to Representative Bruce and then he can get it to our committee, I'd love just personally to have a chance to look at some of that stuff if you've got it. Members of the committee, I know you've got a couple questions. We've got two other speakers and we've got a meeting right after this. So I'm going to ask that we hold questions just for a second. And I'm going to ask the next two speakers if you can kind of get up and get in queue. Because we do have a meeting right after this. Councilwoman, thank you so much. DeLon Brown, did I pronounce that right?
You did, yes.
Now,
DeLon
before
Brown.
you speak, I see your organization is called Kids with Strong Opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I think my child could be a founding member of that. I'd say that is a great name. I'm going to let you have the floor for just a couple minutes if that's okay.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
So my name is DeLon Brown, and I am one of the co-founders of Kids with Strong Opinions, which is the organization that mentors these girls. We do mentor them at Renaissance Middle School, and we meet with them twice a week. Once a week now, in after-school program. And I think Councilman Brown summed up everything that I wanted to say, that sitting and listening to the children, this is not just, I want to make that clear because we don't want it to be that South Fulton and Fulton County Schools is taking the brunt of this. This is an issue that we know that we see on the news every day from all schools within the state of Georgia. But to listen to these children on a daily basis, talk about what they experience. I know what it took for me to get myself prepared this morning to bring them down here today, and how I felt with being rushed to get them to school, and how you have to course correct yourself during the day when you're working because you have children. You have to prepare those children in the morning to go to school. You have your normal things as a parent that you deal with. And then you have to go to work, and you have to work every day and deal with other people and other people's, opinions and just your day-to-day, your job. I can only imagine what a child has to go through to be fearful to get on the bus, or to just know that they have to just deal with the rowdiness of the kids, and then go to school all day, and then have to, prepare themselves to get back on that bus to go home. They're in school long hours. And this started with them saying, do adults know what we go through? You know, we do, well, we can say that it's something that, you know, is the norm. I'm a product of City of Atlanta public schools, or Atlanta public school system. And I know what I experienced, the overcrowdedness, and that was back in the 80s and 70s, overcrowdedness on the bus. I've been a product of having to stand up on the bus and brace myself when the bus is turning or when there's fighting. So I just think that some things go on for a long time. And we as adults, if nothing else that this bill has done, it has taught them how to express themselves and not being seen and not heard, but, you know, to let people know, adults know what they're going through, and then we come together and find a solution for them for those problems. But as they say, you know, I think they've done a great job in presenting this, not just from student safety, but the safety of the bus driver, the safety of their peers all over the state of Georgia, and the other people that are on the road.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
so I just want to say that.
I'd commend them again. Those are some powerful voices, some powerful girls there, and they made the voice here. And frankly, they've opened my eyes to some things that are real issues that we've got to deal with. So I'm grateful that they, with Representative Bruce, have brought this legislation. I'm going to ask, is there a Mr. or Mrs. Sanders, parent advocate, public advocate?
Yes, how you doing, sir?
Yes, sir. I'll give you a couple minutes here.
I just want to say a few things. We already heard the girls testify what needs to be done, and I'm just saying, my granddaughter was on a bus. Something happened. She wouldn't tell me what happened. She just didn't want to ride the bus no more. And I also have a special needs son as well. In Douglas County, which they put advocates of us as a Douglas County for special needs only. But we do need that for kids as well, too, that doesn't have special needs, because a lot of times the kids get to fight in schools. Some kids follow the buses home, the other buses home, and situations can happen. So I'm just asking, please, I'm imploring you guys, please help these kids out, because these kids came, they asked, we just need to give back.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We've got 2 minutes left. So, Representative Maynard, do you have a burning question or comment you'd like to add?
I can make it really quick. My comment is Brown versus Board of Education. We must provide kids with adequate education. Now, adequate may be a subjective term, but we know for sure that, as the councilwoman pointed out, part of adequate education is also transportation to get the education. So once those kids enter onto the bus, they have entered, in my mind, into the educational system. And so what the children have presented today is not adequate. And I wish I was an attorney, because then I would be like, this is a civil rights violation, because we are not providing adequate education. Thank you.
With that, the author of the bill, I'll give you a closing comment.
I wanted to just thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee. Regardless of what happens with this bill, the education that these children receive today is going to last them a lifetime. And I appreciate it more than you can imagine. I just want to make sure that you're clear. You know, the bill started out with a mandate. The original bill mandated that all schools do it, but after we talked about it with members of different organizations and boards, it came down to what you have in front of you, which is a voluntary participation where we as the state are helping the local school system. Some of them don't have the money to do it. And while I understand what the representative was saying about volunteers, this is not something volunteers can really do. They can be on the bus, but they can't do the job. We need professional people who are properly trained to be on these buses with these children, to make sure not only that the children are safe, but that the bus driver themselves are safe, and the other people on the road are safe. You know, we have to be cognizant of the fact that the bus is not the only vehicle out there, and if that bus is in an accident, it's in an accident with somebody else. Yeah. So all of those things. So once again, I hope you can see it in my face how proud I am of these young ladies back here. And again, I'd love to be any of their dads. I'd be proud of them. And so thank you very, very much. I'm not sure what's going to happen now with the bill. I know our sessions are 2 years in the process, so I'm hoping that based on what you've heard today, that you'll pass this on to the full committee, and that when we get back in January, that this bill will be heard by the full committee and made part of the law.
I think that sounds good. Thank you, Representative Bruce. And I'm going to offer the ladies on the front row, and only the ladies on the front row only. My office here is office 504. I've got free Cokes and peanuts, all you can eat. So if you stop by,
Would you guys mind if the young ladies came up there and took a picture with you guys?
Let's do that real quick. Latricia is my admin. Tell her I told you it's okay. All right. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, good. Cool. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Education Curriculum Subcommittee. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Representative Clark to do an invocation, please.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, just thank you for this time we have in this committee today. Just be with everyone in this room, God. Anybody who's going through anything, just please help them through that trial. And just bless our time in these last 3 days of session and help us to do good work for all the people of Georgia. In the name of the Lord Jesus, amen.
Thank you, Representative. All right, cool. Well, I wanted to let everyone know that this is a hearing only. I'm filling in for Chair Lady Bethany Ballard. My name is Mike Chokas, and the first order of business, the first presenter will be Senator Davenport. Please, you want the podium or the desk? Desk. Which one do I do? This one? Well, Senator Davenport, thank you for coming here, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the committee. I have here Senate Bill 4, and we're working off of LC 491121, which is really the Blind Persons Braille Literacy Rights and Education Act. And it basically is to make sure that students K through 12 be given the opportunity to have Braille. And this is supported certainly by the Library Association and others. Let's see here. I want to make sure that this bill will ensure that you have IEP, which is the Individualized Education Plan of each blind or visually impaired child, which includes the supervision for instruction in Braille and the use of Braille appropriate to the child's current and future literacy needs. And it impacts every blind and visually impaired student in the state of Georgia. They deserve the right to be taught in Braille, and we want to do that as a state. It is important because the instruction in Braille reading and writing will enable each blind or visually impaired child to communicate effectively and efficiently with the same level of proficiency expected of their peers of comparable ability and grade level. So we just want to make sure that each child that needs Braille will have it. They want to be productive in the community, want to be a part of the workforce, and they can do that if they start early and have Braille in the schools. And the Library Association has the capability of assisting in that. If there are any questions, be happy to answer. And I think we have people who are here supporting the bill that have signed up, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Before we ask questions, why don't you have the other presenters come, if that's okay? Who have you invited to present, Senator?
Ms. Kristen White from the Georgia Library Service. And then we have some people from the blind and visually impaired community. We understand that there are about 250 to 260,000. And they said they need the services they have not been getting, and they would like the state to intervene here and try to get some instruction for Braille children. And I think there are about 3 or 4. Okay.
Cool. Do you want to stay at the table? And
okay.
Why don't you stay at the table and let them come support you? Now, who would you do the introduction, Senator, so we'll know who will be speaking?
You want to speak for the Library Service first? Okay.
Hello, my name is Kristen White. I am the State Director of the Georgia Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. We have about 10,000 patrons statewide who are considered print disabled and who are on our patron list. About 68 to 70% of those folks identify as blind or visually impaired. And so while as a state agency we cannot advocate for or against the bill, we are here today to say that we do have services available if the bill passes. We contract with the Utah Library for the Blind for Braille service. Right now we have about 153 folks that use that service. Last month, they circulated about 192 items out and 137 items in. And it's all run by Free Matter for the Blind. So, it's all run through the mail, Free Matter for the Blind. So the circulation process is pretty seamless. It goes directly to the person's house. So it would go directly to the student's house or directly to their school. And we're here today with some of the folks from the advocacy community for the blind, just to say that we're available and able to fulfill the leisure reading needs as well as other reading needs if the bill passes. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Well, we're going to save the questions for after the presentation, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I just want to hear from everyone that is going to speak first that signed up.
All righty. All right, you got it. Okay. Oops. Hey, what did I just? Oh, I think I did something wrong. I brought my device up here so I could show it to you as I talked. My name is Annie Maxwell. My background is education and recreation therapy. For 20 years or so, I worked with visually impaired students in the school system. We had a supplementary program at the Center for the Visually Impaired that offered after-school education, weekend activities, summer camps, mentoring program, and sports. During those years, I think I worked with maybe over 2,000 kids. And one of the things that always kind of got me was that a lot of those kids were not Braille users. What they had was a CCTV where you blow up the print and you read. A lot of them was so visually limited that they were reading one letter at a time because they had to blow it up the size of the screen. That is not reading. That is not reading. That is not. We need to make sure that these kids are being given their fair share. The opportunity to learn to read, just as the sighted kids. When a sighted child goes to school, it's never asked, should he learn print? Well, how is he going to learn anything else after that if he doesn't learn print? Now, some of the kids who are low vision do have enough vision that they can function without Braille. But I learned Braille from the first grade on, and thank God I did. I have not ever not needed Braille. Braille is something that I use in my everyday life. When I'm in the kitchen, I have labeled, everything I have is labeled, even my appliances. And I wanted to show you this device. This is called a Braille Sense. And what this is a device that I can read along with you. If I pulled up my choir book that has over 150 songs on here. And every time we get ready to learn a new song, I just access it on here, and the choir director can email me the update, and I can put it on my SD card and put it in here. And whatever she says we're going to practice, I just go in and pull it up. Now, I could not do that with a CCTV at choir rehearsal. I mean, I had to bring my whole trunk or whatever with all of the stuff that I would need. But this is so accessible and it's so convenient. And suppose I came to a meeting here and you had some papers that you were passing out to the people in the audience, and you would give me an SD card with the information on it. I would put it in here. This is my little SD slot. I'm going to just sort of eject this and show you. I have my SD card in here, and I can put whatever you gave me on here. I can insert it back into my machine, and it pops up, and you won't feel bad about not having Braille to give me. But this machine does everything that I need. I can hook this up to a computer and read the Braille documents. What it does is it would access the print, but then I could read it with the Braille on this device.
there are so many devices that are on the market now. I mean, it blows your mind to think about all those things that are on the market now. The only thing is that they're expensive, but somehow we afford them. We get them because we want them and we need them. But I can access. Suppose you sent me an email or you sent me a text message. I can hook up. I could pair this machine with my phone, read the text message in Braille, and answer you back in Braille, and you would get the answer in print. Now, how good is that? Now, suppose we didn't have any Braille to access this stuff with. Our lives would be so cumbersome because we'd have to carry around too much stuff. And those heavy books in your book bag, those large print heavy things that you have, that you have to take around with you, lug around with you. You don't do that. You can just use these devices, which has made it so much easier. And I definitely, I don't want to see Braille in. I don't know when this thing came that the computer is going to take the place of Braille. You can't learn to read using the computer. I mean, you miss all the punctuations. In the after-school program, I was just sort of floored at how these kids didn't even know how to use the period and the comma because they didn't know about that. They just listen, and nobody's going to say period, comma. They're just reading. And so when they would write a whole paragraph or whole document, they would have no punctuations in it. Just went on and on and on, and the spelling was horrible. So this is not something that we need to we don't even need to talk about ending Braille and not having Braille as something that these students need to learn. It's just like not teaching print. It is just as crucial as your child going to school and never given a print book. And that would be, it would just be criminal, and which is kind of like what I see this as. So let's keep this bill alive and let's teach kids Braille. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. They need to put you on a commercial for that. Hey, who is our next presenter?
I'm next. I think here it is. All right, my name is Dorothy Griffin. And so what I want to talk about is things that we have in our toolbox. So, and I want you to imagine in your homes, and you are looking for a plumber to come in order to do it. And you see a commercial and he says, I can come to your house and fix anything you need me to do with my trusty hammer. Anything you need done, I have it. It's my trusty hammer. So I don't think in his toolbox he just comes to your house with a hammer and then you feel when he gets there, you're going to fix what? How you going to fix plumbing with a hammer? And that's how we feel about Braille. If you cannot see and you need Braille in order to read and keep up with your peers, and also as you get to be an adult and you want to go to school and you can't read the textbooks because you need them in Braille, then you want that Braille in your toolbox in order to become a law-abiding, well-situated adult. And also, I will say that I have taught school too, also. And audio is okay, but a lot of our children have attention deficits. And so you can listen and rewind it as much as you want to, but it doesn't mean that they've learned how to read. They don't know how to spell by it. And did they even comprehend all of that they heard through audio? So I just wanted to say that to give you an idea and think about, you definitely want your plumber to come to your house with the right tools in order to fix your plumbing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And next, could you please introduce yourselves?
Oh, I'm Betsy Grinovich, and my daughter will speak after me. I brought up two devices. I know that Annie already talked about the Braille Sense, but I wanted to give you a use for this that would be hard to do on Braille. Be hard to do without Braille. I'm secretary of several groups, There is no way I could write as fast in recording and having to go back and listen than on this device, on the Sense device. On this thing, and there's no way I could go back and check my spelling. You can make screen readers spell things to you, but who's going to sit there like Annie was saying, and going to sit there and spell letter by letter and punctuate? I wouldn't. And on this device, because of Braille, you can read what you wrote. And then I can also email it from the Sense to my laptop when I want to proof what I wrote on here and then fix it so that I can send it out. Also, I homeschooled my 4 children. There's no way, my 3 children, there's no way I could have homeschooled without Braille materials. There's absolutely no way. And I used to get my books put in Braille so that I could read them and know what was in their print book. Now I could just put it on these devices. Oh, what space it would save. I learned Braille at the age of 5. That was many years ago, but we were taught it from age 5, and we worked on it all the way through high school as we learned more and more Braille. And to give you an idea, the Braille took up so much space, they had to use shelves and shelves up. Just to give you an idea, it takes up space in those days because we didn't have these devices. Give you an example, Webster's Dictionary was 72 4-inch volumes. Now, these kids would not have to deal with that because most children now are given these devices to learn their Braille on and to practice it. Also, reading Braille books on the e-reader that the library has given us now to test out on this device. I have hundreds of books loaded on here. How would I read them without Braille? I couldn't. I would have to sit and try to scan them on a scanner and listen to all the mistakes it makes. But right now, I can pull up any book I want to pretty much and read it with my fingers. I can read it no matter where I'm at. I take both of these with me no matter where I am. So Braille to me is very essential. It needs to be taught as the blind people that need it, and the TVI's teachers, the visually impaired, they can take the courses for free, and that's what needs to happen.
Thank you.
I'm DJ McIntyre. I'm Betsy's
Could I
daughter.
interrupt you 1 second? Would you also introduce your darling children?
They're outside.
No, they're back in. I will. Here they come. Right on cue. Absolutely.
Are they paying attention to mommy?
Who knows?
He saw
Your
mommy.
mommy's a very important lady, and your grandmother.
This one knows. He likes the camera action. This is my daughter Rachel. Say hi. She's 5, and we're homeschooling, so she's in kindergarten. And this is Daniel. Can you say how old you are? Say, I'm 2. They go everywhere we go, so we've been around the Capitol. This is our 13th time at the Capitol this year. So we come as a group, as a posse. I love advocating, but I think them coming along is just kind of an education too. I'm speaking as someone who grew up with Braille, clearly, because my mom being blind. And I want to do a little exercise with you guys, because I have a kindergartner, and I can never imagine doing what these blind students are doing, and that is taking away their pen and paper. If I walked into a kindergarten classroom and said, sorry, here's a tablet, here's a laptop, learn your alphabet, what would the literacy rate be? What would the understanding of language be if we took that pencil and paper? So in front of you, you have a 4x6 card. Hopefully everybody has a pen. If you don't, I have pens in my purse. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little exercise. I'm gonna use my phone, and I want you all to close your eyes, because you're gonna take away your visual factor. I'm going to play a sentence. It's gonna tell you, please write this sentence, but don't open your eyes till it's done. And I want you to write that sentence from memory. So give me just a second, make sure
Settings.
you can hear this. And here we go.
Active. Notes. Notes. All on my iPhone. Landscape. Share. More. March 27th. Note. Please write the following: I love beets, but dislike greens. Text field.
So
Double tap to edit.
I'm gonna play it one more time.
2023 at note. I love beets, but dislike greens.
So if you can write that sentence, you don't have to close your eyes while you're writing, but
Settings. Voiceover. Voiceover off.
for most of us in this room, that's hard to do because most of us are visual. We learn either visual, hand over hand. I grew up auditory because that's all I did. My mom couldn't sit at the math chart and point to the number 10 and say, what number is that? Or point to the letter chart, what letter is that? So I was auditory, but as I grew and was able to read more, I am definitely more of a visual learner. And I think we're doing a disservice to the blind in the state of Georgia by not teaching Braille. I was shocked to find out that the School for the Blind in Macon doesn't even teach Braille. That's where it should be happening. But I think I just compare it to taking it from my kids. Like, how do you take that away from them, that tool? And something my brother said, there's 4 of us in the family, and he said, how do you find the bathroom? That's not where my brain goes. Now, when I talk about Braille on a support group I do for children with blind parents, we talk about the usage in Braille elevator. How do you find an elevator number? But how do you find the bathroom? If your vision is not very good, and like even Ms. Maxwell was saying, with the CCTV, you're looking at zooming in so much that a regular piece of paper, you're 1 letter at a time, you can't see that bathroom sign. How do you know which bathroom to use? You're going to ask somebody? You're going to take your phone and take a picture and zoom in? You're going to use, there's all sorts of apps, but that's embarrassing. I really need to go to the bathroom. I just got off a plane. How am I going to do that if I don't have this tool? And it's already been mentioned, the grammar. I can point to you people that I know in the blind community who don't have Braille because they're spelling. I have to sit there, usually turn a screen reader on my computer to figure out what they're trying to say. Because if I read the word, that's not how that's spelled. But if I hear it, oh, okay, that's what they were trying to do because it's all auditory. So I think this is a bill that we need to see passed. We need to see it do, and we need to give blind people the same advocacy that our sighted kids. Treat them equal. They want to be equal. They want to go to college. They want to do all these things. And if we're not giving them this basic skill, what's going to happen? As I told some people, they didn't believe me that we don't do Braille in Georgia as much. And I said, what happens when your phone dies? What happens when you move to California and you have blackouts for hours a day and you can't, you use your tech? What if natural disaster hits your house, all your technology's gone, you're in a flood? What do you do if all these kids know is something that plugs into the wall and they cannot function without that, and we're leaving them out to dry? And I think this bill is just way too important to skip over. I want to see it through to the end, and I want to see our kids here in Georgia just grow wings and sprout. We have someone we know who we've known since he was little and is now working up in DC. But his mom made sure he learned Braille, made sure all of his books were in Braille. And it really makes that big of a difference in their lives. So if you have any questions for us, the center is going to get them, but if you need to call any of us up, feel free.
Well, we do have several questions, and I'd like all the presenters to be close by, but we also are limited for time because we also have Representative Patty Bentley. Is she coming back? Okay. You've got until she comes back. Anyway, so I think number 18 was first, so if you've got a question.
Yes, thank you. As a physical therapist, just working with people in general, I'm just so thankful that you brought this to light. And I'm going to get my glasses out because that is just how important this is. We're in the Lent season, and so this morning my church did a call, and I oversaw the Lent prayer for this morning. And the Lent prayer for this morning was Ephesians 1:16. I do not cease to give thanks for you. And so listening to the daughter bring this, it's like she is the Esther for the Braille community. It's just, it's just a time for this. You are that person. And we need to think about what is the return on investment if we were to give 100,000 kids the ability to read and enter into the workforce. This is not a bill that should just be a hearing only. We need to immediately allow children to be able to read. A fact, in 1918, the U.S. adopted Braille as the official writing system. So we were supposed to be doing this already. Now, what's even more surprising, this was in the paper yesterday, and I'm reading from the Associated Press. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously Tuesday for a deaf student who sued his public school system for providing an inadequate education. The case is significant for other disabled students who allege they were failed by school officials. The case the justices ruled involved a student that was not given the proper tools to learn because he was hearing impaired. So now there's Supreme Court precedents. You know, what does it mean if today we've heard this situation? You know, in my mind, as a parent, I don't have a child that's visually impaired, but if I heard that, then I'm immediately going to anybody and everybody saying, my rights are being violated and I need Braille immediately. Thank you for the bill.
All righty. I didn't quite catch the question in that. All right, number 27.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. So I've learned a lot, and I'd like to know, when did we stop teaching Braille in our public school, or did we ever teach Braille in our public schools?
Annie, was it ever required?
It was, you know, it was never required, I don't think, but it was done. And I think that in the last maybe 20 years or so, it's sort of been falling off the shelf.
Because I think there's a school for the blind in DeKalb near me, so I'm just like, I want to ask all these questions now about when we stopped doing it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Senator, for bringing this bill. I know I'm going to say yes on something like this because it's important. But just like my colleague, I'm actually a little shocked. How are visually impaired students today receiving instruction if it's not Braille?
It's auditory. They're learning how to use iPads in elementary school. It's
Oh,
all
wow.
auditory.
So coming from I'm a naturalized citizen, and coming from a country that is not as advanced technology-wise as the U.S., the basic learning for visually impaired or the blind is Braille.
It's cheaper.
Yeah, it's Braille. So I don't see how a country like ours, so advanced, that we can't continue to use the basics rudimentary for people who are visually impaired. I mean, this is an excellent bill. I will support this one.
The teachers of the visually impaired are supposed to learn it, but a lot of them have not learned it. And and some schools in some counties in our state don't even have teachers of the visually impaired, but there's a way the kids can learn it online now as well. But our teachers of the visually impaired aren't teaching it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 28. Number
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator, thank you for this bill as well. I've learned a lot just sitting here today, like our colleagues. I guess my question is, this seemed to be a no-brainer. I'm just wondering, why are we even talking about this? I mean, I get to the question, and that is, I would assume that it may be an appropriations issue or a fiscal note issue, and I don't know if we've addressed that or not, but other than that, I just think this ought to be done without even a conversation.
There's no funds involved in this bill. Those TVIs, or teachers visually impaired, are learning it during their training, supposed to be. And if they're not, the Library of Congress has courses on it that cost nothing. So there's no money involved in this bill. It's just requiring that this is made to be a bill in the in our state, so that these teachers know the seriousness. There's no money attached.
And plus, the library system is there to support and give instructions if needed.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Just one, I think the biggest issue in the school systems, and this is just coming from a millennial, it's easier in their minds to give somebody a tablet and not take time with that student to actually give them what they need, and say, here, this is enough. I think it's seen as an easy way out. Well, they have technology. Well, they'll have iPhones one day. They'll have speech. Okay, but that doesn't get the whole student. I think that's kind of been what I've heard growing up from a lot of the kids who were in public schools as visually impaired was, well, the teacher said it was easier. The teacher said we're going to learn tech. Well, there's learning tech, But that's not teaching you an everyday skill that you can use regardless. And so I think that's where this bill comes in is I think it's a no-brainer too. The fact that we have to put it in rules is just to hold those people's feet to the fire and say, this needs to be done, instead of making it an easy get out the back door because there is technology out there. We've kind of let technology take over and lost that hands-on touch. Hold on, let Annie.
I wanted to say that.
Move to the side.
Yeah.
Move, you can, okay. There you go, Annie. Do you have more?
Okay. Okay. I want to say that you know why this is being talked about is because they have been able to get away with it. Just starting ever since the computer started, the kids have started to get the laptop and the iPad and all of that, and take it home and keep it until summer. And then when summer comes, they have nothing because they take it back. And then the visual impaired kid is sitting there. He doesn't know how to read anything. Can't even listen to anything because the teacher got it. But anyway, it's all about getting away with this stuff. We need to stop it right now. Right now in this room with this committee, being on board with us to please not raise any more illiterate visual impaired kids.
Cool. Hold on. Yes. Finish that. Yes, ma'am, Senator.
Yes, some people have asked, basically, what does Braille mean? And we try to tell them it's a system of reading and writing through touch. But these students want to learn the skill of Braille, and we want to make sure that they can do it, and we need to make sure that the teachers and the instructors are there to provide it. And we're not trying to blame anyone, especially the teachers. My mother taught for 38 years. She was a Title I reading teacher, and my sister 34. So we want to make sure that if we have this bill, then it's required that anyone that's there teaching will be able to teach students Braille. I think it's really the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I've got, I think I've let everyone ask a question once. And if y'all have any further questions, I would encourage you to meet with the presenters. But Senator, before you conclude, there's a couple of, and I don't know whether they're comments or thoughts that I have personally that I'd like to talk about. And the young lady with the two adorable children alluded to one of one of the issues. And that is Georgia currently has the Georgia Academy for the Blind in Macon, Georgia. And I've been there and toured the facilities. And it's amazing what specialized education that we've been able to provide. Obviously, it's not enough. There's no question about that. It's obviously not enough. But what the question I have is, at what age do we need to start instructing students that have severe visual impairments? And that may be to you or to any of the presenters.
This bill really addresses K through 12. So I think that children learning, they can learn much, they can do better. They're better prepared if the earlier they start. And for pre-K and all of that, when children are exposed, they do much better in life. They learn more, and they do much better than waiting until they are 5 or 6 years old. If they get a little head start there, they do much better.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree with you more. The second question that I had is, we're talking about providing the education in Braille to visually impaired students. Has there been any thought or discussion around offering Braille as a second language?
It's not a language. It's not a language, it's just another system in writing and reading.
Okay. But it may be something that people, I know we have sign language for the deaf. It may be another option for people, for children or adults that want to take it.
Yeah, it wouldn't work as a language because it's known as a writing and reading system.
All righty. Well, thank you. You've answered my question. Senator, thank you very much. Presenters, thank you very much. It was very enlightening. And I'm sorry we're short for time. I encourage all the members that have additional questions to talk with the presenters. And the senator, if you can stay longer, if you can, I understand.
I have to be in the Senate rules that I'm late for, but we will, and hopefully the committee will, I know this was just a hearing, and we wanted to see if we could push this forward and give these children a chance.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Patty Bentley, do you prefer the podium or the table? The table. Thank you. I'm sorry for the delay. Thank you for your patience. My seatmate and close friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Patty Bentley.
Yes.
AKA the Strawberry Queen.
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I thank you for your patience this afternoon and your listening ear and attention to this bill that I'm going to present, which is House Bill 174. And I just want to make certain that we are make it known immediately before we start to having a discussion about the bill, because I realize today is only a hearing. Want to definitely highlight and reiterate the fact that HB 174 is not a vaccine mandate bill. Okay, this bill basically helps provide information to parents and guardians of students entering the 6th grade with information on the HPV vaccine, just as we do for all other vaccines across the state, meningitis and influenza. And we also have a video this afternoon of some supporters of this legislation, and I have our lobbyist, Ms. Wendy Clifton, who's been working with me on this legislation. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to invite her to join me at the table if that's appropriate for you.
That's perfectly appropriate.
Okay, Ms. Wendy, will you please join me? And members of the committee, will you please focus your attention to the screen, as we have a little short video we would like to share with you. But before we do that, do you have anything you'd like to say at this time? Okay, thank you. So if you will, ladies and gentlemen, please refer to the screen for a short video about HPV and how this legislation will certainly help parents and students across the state, particularly in rural Georgia. There we are. Here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, committee members, for your time today. My name is Anne-Reed Smock-Daniel, and I'm a researcher in the Women's Rights Division at Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch is an international, non-governmental organization that investigates and reports on human rights abuses across the world, including here in the U.S. Since 2018, we have documented barriers that are driving racial disparities in cervical cancer mortality rates across the U.S. South. Cervical cancer is highly preventable and treatable, yet approximately 4,300 women die from the disease each year in the U.S. Black women die at disproportionate rates, including here in Georgia. They are almost 1.5 times as likely to die of cervical cancer than white women in this state, and these disparities increase at alarming rates as women age. In 2020, the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice and Human Rights Watch partnered with 9 community-based researchers to research and document barriers driving these racial disparities in 3 rural counties in Georgia: Baker, Coffee, and Wilcox. Along with almost 150 individual interviews conducted by the researchers with Black women in their communities, We conducted extensive background research and consulted with or interviewed a total of 46 academics, medical providers, public health officials, and members of non-governmental health rights and justice organizations in Georgia. We published an 82-page report in January of 2022 during Cervical Cancer Awareness Month that documented our findings. In addition to a lack of affordable health insurance, challenges around transportation, and racism and discrimination within the healthcare field, our research found that access to information to prevent and treat cervical cancer is a major barrier contributing to higher rates of cervical cancer for Black women in rural communities. Many of the women we interviewed just didn't have information on steps that they could take to lower their risk of and also prevent cervical cancer, including information on the HPV vaccine, which is an effective cancer prevention tool. Approximately 1/3 of the 148 women we interviewed reported not being knowledgeable about the HPV vaccine. And this included several parents with adolescent children who are at the age when they should be receiving the vaccine. Many women learned about the vaccine for the first time as a result of our research, and we heard repeatedly from individuals who asked why they had never received this information before. Everyone should have access to information on the HPV vaccine, and we're confident that House Bill 174 will help ensure that more people in Georgia do. Thank you for your time today.
Good afternoon, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Sarah Barbara Williams with the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice, SRBWI. We were formed in 2001 to address the unrelenting, systemic, institutionalized discrimination and abuse faced by rural Black women in the U.S. South. I'd like to speak for a minute on cervical cancer, the HPV vaccine, and what HB 174 will do. First, cervical cancer is one of the most preventable cancers, and we know how to prevent it with the HPV vaccine. Almost all cases of cervical cancer are caused by HPV, the most common sexually transmitted infection in the US. What many people don't realize is that according to the CDC, most people will contract HPV at some point in their lives. Although most HPV infections clear up on their own, persistent HPV infections can lead to cervical cancer as well as cancers of the vagina, vulva, penis, anus, and the back of the throat. The HPV vaccine protects against certain types of HPV that can lead to cancer, and almost all cases of cervical cancer can be prevented by the vaccine. The CDC recommends that all adolescents receive the HPV vaccine starting at 11 or 12 years old, although it can be given as starting at age 9. Despite its role in preventing cancer, our research found that so few people, including many parents, know about the HPV vaccine. Without this information, women don't understand steps they can take to prevent HPV and lower their risk of cervical cancer. We heard over and over again in our research that this information was missing, and women in rural communities in particular are not receiving it. So access to information on HPV vaccine is critical to ensuring that everyone can take steps to prevent cervical cancer. HB 174 will do just that. It will ensure that parents and guardians of students entering the 6th grade in Georgia receive this life-saving information on the HPV vaccine, as well as information on other recommended adolescent vaccines. Providing parents and guardians with this information is crucial to ensuring that they understand that the HPV vaccine and how it provides lifelong protection against cancer. It will also ensure that they can make informed decisions on their health and the well-being of their children. HPV 174 will provide widespread access to information on the HPV vaccine and will ensure most people understand how they can protect themselves against cervical cancer, as well as other forms of cancer that impact everyone. It will also address a major barrier driving higher rates of cervical cancer deaths for Black women in Georgia, especially in rural communities where information on sexual and reproductive health is very limited. And now I'd like to introduce Kay Eady and Olivia Coley-Pearson, two of the community-based researchers who conducted the research on this project, to share their findings and experience. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Dr. Kay Eady. I'm from Albany, Georgia, a military spouse, a retired educator with a focus on middle grade education. From 2020 to 2021, I participated in this project as a community-based researcher. I interviewed over 25 women living in neighboring Baker County, where I've worked for 6 years, to understand barriers that Black women face in accessing cervical cancer care. As Sarah mentioned, men and women in my community do not have access to information on sexual and reproductive health, including information on the HPV vaccine. Being from rural Southwest Georgia, I knew this, but I was still struck by just how little information many of the women I spoke with had received and the impact this had on their health. I remember one interview in particular with a 26-year-old woman. Despite seeing her gynecologist for routine visits and tests and staying on top of her health, she told me that she'd never heard of the HPV vaccine. She first learned about the vaccine during our interview. There's a vaccine that prevents cervical cancer that she could have received over 14 years ago. Yet, the first time she'd ever heard about it was during our interview. She hadn't received this information in school or through her medical providers. In fact, she had last gone to see her gynecologist the month before I spoke with her. This was truly shocking to me. Through my interviews, it became clear how entire generations are missing out on life-saving information on sexual and reproductive health, as so many parents do not have this information on young people, are not receiving this information in schools or from their medical providers. This lack of information is contributing to high rates of cervical cancer for Black women in this state. As a former educator of middle grade students, I know the critical role that schools play in disseminating information to parents and families. And this is especially true in rural communities where access to information is limited. I heard over and over again that women wish they had information to prevent cervical cancer. They wish that they knew about the HPV vaccine and that schools would provide this information and that schools would provide this information and that more people had access to it. House Bill 174 would do just that and ensure that more people in Georgia have access to life-saving information on the HPV vaccine, including rural communities where this information is often unavailable. Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank you, the committee members, for this listening opportunity today. My name is Olivia Coley-Pearson, and I bring greetings to each of you from Douglas, Coffee County, Georgia, where I have had the opportunity to serve as an elected official on the City Council for the past 23 years. Also, as well as a Human Rights Commissioner lead for SRBWI for over 20 years. In addition, I served as a community-based researcher on this research project with SRBWI and Human Rights Watch for the past 3 years, in which I am extremely honored to have had this opportunity, because this research project has promoted vast knowledge on cervical cancer and the HPV vaccine. This research information has brought gratification and important knowledge to our rural communities. Like unto Dr. Edie, I was struck by how little information the women I interviewed had concerning their sexual and reproductive health. I was especially concerned by how little knowledge they had on measures and steps in which they could take to prevent cervical cancer, including information on the HPV vaccine. The majority of the women interviewed did not know about the HPV vaccine, and this included several parents with adolescent children. In fact, one 35-year-old mother of 4 children ages 16, 10, 9, and 8 during the time that we spoke in February of 2021 did not know about the HPV vaccine or that it prevents cancer. As it has been shown, the HPV vaccine is a recommended vaccine for all adolescents in the United States. Yet, this mother of 4 had no knowledge about this vaccine, which we have found to be really unbelievable during this current day and time. The women I've interviewed during the research project and those I've had an opportunity to encounter since the launch of our report want to have this information so that they can better understand how they can keep their children healthy and steps to take now to prevent cancer and other adverse health outcomes in the future. In addition, they all deserve to have this life-saving information available to them. House Bill 174 would help ensure that parents, guardians, like so many mothers I've spoken with, do receive this information on the HPV vaccine, because this bill helps to mandate access to information. In addition, this bill will have a tremendous impact on increasing knowledge of improving health outcomes and racial disparities concerning cervical cancer rates within my community and throughout Georgia, which would thus promote healthy and thriving citizens and communities, which is the ultimate goal that we all seek. Again, thank you, committee members, for lending a listening ear to our quest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for watching that short video. And again, House Bill 174 is not a vaccine mandate. It solely is to provide all parents and guardians of students entering the 6th grade with information on the HPV vaccine and eliminating preventable cervical cancer deaths in rural Georgia. And if I may just take a moment to share with you, back in 1996, my grandmother passed away of cervical cancer. So this legislation is very dear to my heart. So I appreciate you all for giving me the opportunity to share this afternoon. And I realize that this is only a hearing, but I will hope that you take this hearing very seriously. Thank you.
We do, Representative. Thank you very much. Do you have time for a couple of questions?
I do.
Great. All right. Number 18. I think y'all know each other.
Yes. Thank you for bringing the legislation. Great piece of legislation. One thing I like about the video is it just brought light to lots of other issues. So with the research, they found that these families and parents were not aware of HPV and what the consequences were of HPV, but I know the Medical College Association, the Medical Association, I think they were mandating that physicians, like family medicine and OBGYNs, had to give this information to children at a certain age, which means that in rural Georgia, based on this research, that if they are not getting that from their physicians, maybe there's a lack of those physicians in the area as well. So that's the other light that came to be. But the other thing that was just a little surprising to me, my first job out of college was working at CDC, and I worked in the HIV/AIDS, STD area. And so back then, HPV was not the number one STD. So it's just kind of interesting hearing that it's the number one STD now. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. All right, number 27.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rep, for bringing this bill. So I see all these vaccines are underlined. So would it be new for the Department of Education to provide information on all of these vaccines, or do they currently offer it on some of them? Or yeah, so that's what I'm curious about.
I'm going to yield to the expert here, Ms.
Okay.
Wendy Clifton.
Thanks, Representative Bentley. Representative Evans, thank you for that question. So I actually brought the title book because I was curious about that myself. And so this revision or amendment to 20-2-778 actually already is required information to parents of students regarding the meningococcal meningitis and the influenza vaccines. That's already the law today. The meningitis language was just added to the code a couple of years ago. I believe Chair Cooper did that on the health side. What we're doing here is simply adding this to that code section that's already there, and with what Representative Bentley said, and the reason that she said twice, and I'm now going to say a third time, this is not a vaccine mandate bill, is because I understand a number of you have received emails about this bill being a vaccine mandate bill. It is not. We are not saying with this legislation that anyone has to get the HPV vaccination. What this bill says clearly, and if you read the code section that exists today, all we're doing is adding and asking sixth grade and up for that information to be shared with parents of children that are in the 6th through the 12th grade so that they are aware of this as an option for vaccination. The report that was referred to in the video that you watched is quite a actually detailed report, and it's a fascinating read from the point of view that this has really hit Southwest Georgia very challenging. And Representative Chokas, you live in that area, you represent that area, as does Representative Bentley and a number of other members in the General Assembly that signed on to this bill. Those 3 counties that were mentioned in the report are Baker, Coffee, and Wilcox counties. Those were just the 3 counties that the research was done in. It doesn't mean that other counties aren't impacted. And so if you read the full report, which I have several copies, if anybody's interested, I can also give it to you as a link online. In this report, we actually have about a dozen recommendations that are a combination of policy as well as funding, as well as just general kind of informational changes that we need to consider in Georgia because of the fact that African American women die 1.5 times more likely to die of cervical cancer in Southwest Georgia than the rest of the state. So that's all we're trying to do, is educate and inform.
Well, good. Thank you. We've gone a little bit over, but I think both of those issues needed to be addressed, and the time was well spent. Representative Bentley, thank you for bringing it to our attention. And Wendy, thank you for pointing out that where it's already in code for meningitis, and so all we'll be doing is adding another disease to inform our parents of our children.
Absolutely,
the parents of our
Mr. Chairman.
children.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.